Okay, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, so I'll get started. Those that have done coach education stuff with me know that I sometimes go off on a bit of a tangent. So if we get started, we'll make sure we hopefully get through everything. Can you just put in the chat, just put a 1 or a Y in the chat, just so I know that you're here and you can hear me all right, whether that's on Facebook or on what I will do, the way I'm going to try and structure it a little bit tonight is I'll go through a couple of bits. I'll go through kind of 2 or 3 parts of the agenda, and then I will answer some questions. And then I'll go through another 2 or 3 parts of the agenda, then I'll answer more questions. If you ask me a question that I know I'm going to come on to later, I might just say we're going to park that one for a minute and we'll come back to it. But I will try and answer everything. So if I'm talking, something comes up that you want to know more about or you want to ask a question about, just chuck it in the chat straight away and I will do my best to get to it after 10 or 15 minutes. And that way it just breaks it up a little bit as well. It's not just me talking all the time. So tonight is mainly about coaching under 7s and 8s players, but I also include under 6s in this as well. So for those that are just the youngest players, really, the foundation phase players as we talk about them. So how that I think they should be coached at this age group. So just to give a little bit of background of myself, well, I've given an agenda first. So the agenda, we're just going to have I'm just going to give a little introduction. After that introduction, we're going to talk a little bit about how players this age learn, because that's something that's really important. We'll then talk about your coaching behaviours. After we've talked about coaching behaviours, will be the first kind of, if you want to ask some questions, I'll answer some questions, or if you've got any questions now, chuck them in the chat and I'll get to it. After that, I'm going to go through a load of sessions and a load of practices that you can use. So I know this is something that we always get asked for when we're delivering for the FA. We get constantly asked about, well, what sessions can I use? What practices? And we stay away from the word drill now, because drills kind of represents something that's a start and an end point, whereas players are always learning. So we tend to say practices or sessions. Next thing I'll go on after that is how you coach players and mixed abilities. So obviously with the youngest players especially, you get huge differences in their technical and tactical ability, physical ability, their understanding. So I'll go a little bit on how you can manage that difference of ability within your one group, which is a challenge, and it never stops being a challenge. Talking of challenges, we'll then talk a little bit about parents and managing and handling parents and just some tips for that. And then we'll finish off by going through some stuff about match days. So hopefully some of the bits we give you tonight are quite help you out and give you some little bits to try over the next couple of months. So just a little bit of background for myself, for those that don't know me. I've been coaching since 2006 at all levels, so kind of semi-professional adults, academy level. I've done 7 years at academy level, and I've coached at grassroots the whole time that I've coached. So I've got various experiences, which has really helped me develop. And I started off as just a community coach working in schools for Cheltenham, and developed from there and took it into a full-time career. So from there, I've completed my UEFA A licence in terms of my qualifications. Started in 2006, and my A licence in 2020, so a 14-year journey that was. For the last 6 years, I've been tutoring for the FA. So I currently tutor the Introduction to Coaching Football, which has replaced a level 1, the UEFA C, which has replaced a level 2, and I also tutor the UEFA B licence down in Kent as well. As well as this, I set my own company up, Total Sports Coaching, 2011, and we set up to offer typical soccer schools, advanced centres, working in schools. That's just grown and grown and grown. Our philosophy has always been to help get everyone to their own individual potential, whether that's grassroots level, whether that's professional level, helping people through sport to reach their potential. We've done this, and then we've grown throughout the Southeast, one through our good reputation, two through franchising. So that's my kind of experiences. I work with a lot of grassroots clubs, obviously through my work with the FA, I work with a lot of coaches as well. and employ a lot of coaches, which has been great actually to see coaches that work for us go on to develop and work at higher levels than I have. So that's just a brief bit of a background. Right, so how players this age learn? This is the first part, and what I've tried to do is reflect on a load of questions I always get asked by coaches that are working at under 7s and under 8s. And the first thing to remember about players this age is their brains are like sponges. It's an absolute golden time for them to learn and pick things up. But their brains also come with their limitations in terms of they are very selfish and they only really care about that and what is in and around them. So the knock-on effects of them being selfish is they don't really care about anyone else except for themselves and what they're doing. So this is where we get this big battle in terms of what do we teach them, and actually getting them on the ball and getting them on the ball as much as they can is one of the best things you can do at this age. Because they're selfish, the analogy I always use about kids is if you go to a 7-year-old, what's your favourite toy or their favourite toy they get at Christmas, and then you say to them, go and give it to someone else to play with, they're normally going to have a meltdown. Anyone that's got kids that age can probably remember this stage or is at this stage now. You're asking them to give away their favourite thing in the world, and that's what we ask them to do when we send them to pass the ball all the time. So one reason they don't like passing too much at this age is because they're quite selfish and they want it to be all about them. Now, you will get some kids that do like passing the ball and can do it naturally, and that's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. I also don't have an issue with players learning about passing at this age, but for me, it's something that I don't focus on. I think it just happens naturally. So because they're selfish, I try and give them a ball each as much as we can. Because their brains are like sponges, what you've got to do is give them the chance when they've got that ball to try and manipulate it in different ways. So using both parts of their feet, different parts of their feet, and getting as many touches as they can. And I'm talking about during a training session, thousands of touches. And it's always interesting when you count how many touches they actually get during a training session. There's also no point just touching the ball exactly the same way all the time. You want them touching the ball in different ways and manipulating the ball in different ways. So then you've got to find fun ways to do this. Because their brains are like sponges and they'll just learn. The more they touch the ball, their brain is making connections, which will make them better and better. So in terms of developing their technique, as many touches on the ball as possible. They engage through fun games at this age. Now, that one thing in this word, fun, is something you need to ask the players what they find is fun. Because we all have a different interpretation of what fun is. But they tend to engage through fun games, and they'll also need to relate it to something that they understand and know. So when you're working with these players, you can either relate games to characters they know or films they know, and you might think, oh, I want to be coaching properly, but actually learning to engage them by talking about games they play and characters they play, and getting your message across this way helps them to understand it. Another way to do it is getting them to play as players. So I get asked a lot about, even at this age, how do I teach them about positions? How do I teach them about trying new positions? I always say relate it to a player. So if you go, right, if you're going to be Harry Kane today, what does Harry Kane do? And I say, oh, Harry Kane, he scores goals, so he'll be in and around the box, but also he's quite creative as well. Okay, and then you might start, or obviously then they'll all be about Erling Haaland. Okay, so then you can start looking at other players. If you're a bit of an older generation, you might say a Lampard, Gerrard. You might go back to a Hoddle, etc. If you straight away in your head, you'll think about what those players do. So if you say to a player, I want you to be Kevin De Bruyne today, they'll start thinking about, right, I've got to try and be creative and make passes and score goals and set people up. And then try and make it exciting as a defenders as well. So pick a defender that they like and they find exciting. Trent Alexander-Arnold's getting a bit of stick nowadays, but young players will know, if Trent, he can do crosses, but he's got to defend a little bit as well. But actually, he can get things to happen further up the pitch. So relate it to players that they know, and that will help you to teach them tactics and positions. Okay, so thinking, relating stuff to that they understand, they know. Get them to tell you who the characters and the players that they like are. And then they can take it in turns being those players. The other thing is they're creative and they're problem solvers. So at school, they're solving problems all the time. One thing they said about, there's a study about kids and child geniuses years and years ago, that there was a certain amount of kids were classed as a child genius because it was to do with how many different solutions they could come up to with a problem. And if you think about it, if you say to them, oh, how could you get this car from this end of the road to the next end of the road? They'll come up with the wildest, craziest ideas. By the time they leave school, when you ask them the same question, they narrow down their answers because actually we've taken some of the creativity out of them. So we want to allow kids to be creative and come up with solutions. Now, if you want kids to be good at tactics when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, you need to start teaching them tactics now, but in a way that they will understand it. Real simple, basic ways, and let them come up with tactics. So if you set up a little game, 2v2, 3v3, you can go, right, this team are 2-0 up, and this team, you're 2-0 down. We've got 5 minutes left of this game. What are your tactics going to be? Let them come up with solutions to it, and let them try it. They might come up with something that you think that is the most horrendous idea I've ever heard, and you know it's going to go wrong. That's fine. Let them go and try it. And then the key to it afterwards is let them go, how did you get on? What might you change? And let them just come up with ideas, and then they'll start to understand the game. And this is how you start teaching tactics at this age. They will come up with the real simple basics things. That's fine. Okay, but start letting them get involved with creating problems, creating solutions to problems that you've come up with. And then give them little fun challenges, or let them come up with fun challenges as well. So that's a little bit about how they learn. What's important from here is to align your behaviours with that now. Understanding this age group, they're not mini adults, and you need to change the way that you approach things if you want to get them to be the best players they're going to be when they're older. So align your behaviours with why they play. First question is, have you ever asked them why they play? And this is a vital thing to ask your players. Why do they play football? You'll probably be surprised by a lot of the answers, especially at this age. And as they get older, that might surprise you as well. They don't normally play the football to win. That's not an answer you'll get from a lot of kids this age. Okay, some of them will say it. They want to win games. Everyone wants to win. That's great, but it's not really the main reason they play. So find out why they play. A lot of it will be score goals, have fun with my friends, play matches. And then it's something as simple as that. If you've got 7 or 8 players that say, I want to play with my friends and I want to try and score goals, you've really got to think about how your behaviours are affecting them in terms of, are you rotating positions? Are you letting everyone have a go up front? Are you letting them do loads of shooting in training? So that's really important that you are, so that's really important that you are aligning your behaviours with what they want to do. If you get a group of 7-year-olds that turn around and say to you, I want to be a professional footballer, I want to play for England, and all I care about is winning and developing, then you adapt your coaching towards that. And you go, right, okay, coaching is going to be high intensity. It's going to be really competitive. We're going to really push you. But actually what you'll find is that most of them will say, oh, I have fun. I want to score goals. I want to try new things. I want to play with my friends. And that's really important. Just great, Phil. I've seen you've put chucked a question in. Anyone else chuck questions in? Because I'm going to get to them in a couple of minutes. So chuck any questions that you want in the chat, and I'll get to them in the next few minutes. Big bugbear of mine, this next one. Don't be a PlayStation coach. Now, this comes from a variety of different reasons from my experience. So a PlayStation coach is someone that stands there saying, pass, shoot, dribble, and talks players through the game. Coaches see it as they're helping, whereas they might be helping in the very short term in terms of getting them to win a game, but in the long term, you're not helping them. For me, the best players are the players that can make their own decisions. Now, if you are coaching players because they want to develop and you're trying to develop them to the best level they can be, you need to let them make decisions. If you're coaching grassroots players that you're not bothered about where they get to, because it's just about let's have fun, let's be social, let's enjoy ourselves, those players would still prefer to be able to express themselves and try things. Now, there's a balance, and I think coaching over the last few years has gone from this end of the spectrum where it was shout and tell them what to do. And it's gone all the way to the other end of the spectrum of don't say anything, let them figure it out. For me personally, I like it somewhere in the middle. Got no problem with coaching. I've got no problem with telling kids and talking to kids about what could you have tried there? Why have you done that? What might have you done differently? And I've not got a problem with it if it gets to a certain point that they're not learning and they're struggling, then tell them. But if they figure things out themselves, that learning gets deeper embedded into their brains and they'll be better at it. As they get older, the game is so quick, they won't have time to listen to what you're shouting anyway. So if they've not learned to scan and to make decisions by themselves, then you're not helping them in the long term. So you've got to let them make decisions. So I remember reading stuff from Man United before, years ago, when Mullenstein was there, and they had a rule then of you don't coach while the ball is rolling. So the coach is not allowed to say anything while the ball's rolling because the players are making decisions. The coach would then maybe pose a question or say something when the ball's out of play or gone for a throw in. But that's a good little rule of thumb to say you're letting players make decisions. If you're coaching under sevens teams that are 10-0 down at half time because they're not receiving on their back foot to play forward, it's okay for me to tell them and to help them and to show them. I haven't got a problem with that. But let's not be PlayStation coaches that shout the whole way through it. Next is use language they understand. So press is my favourite one. Go and ask your players, what do I mean by press? And they'll come up with some random ideas and random things. And if they do say, oh no, it means we do this, and they get it, ask them to show you what pressing means or show you what tight means. Because actually they all have a completely different interpretation of what tight is to a player. And then if you can start to get a common language that everyone in your team knows, oh, when we press, we go and mark a player each, so everyone's got someone, especially at the youngest ages. Or tight means if I put my arm out, I can touch someone. If you can get a common language like that, that's great for them. But then try and be creative and clever, and they might come up with ideas. So one of the best ones I heard was check your wing mirrors. So they were telling kids to check their wing mirrors, which meant they were looking left and right all the time. And they understood it because it was quite a fun little quirky thing to say. So get them to come up with their own common language for things like that as well. And then the fourth thing is being consistent all the time. Kids need consistency. They need consistency in your behaviour, and they also need you to be consistent with every player. Does anyone in here coach their own kid? If they do, chuck it. If you do, just put it in the chat, because this is something that normally can be quite difficult because we're not always consistent with how we coach our own kid compared to the others. Matt, Mike, great. Can you could you chuck in how you think you treat your kid compared to the others, if you don't mind? So it's just something that we have to be consistent with our behaviours all the time, and it's really difficult sometimes that we've had a bad day at work, or we've had a nightmare at home, or the little one's playing up, and then you get to coaching and you're like, right, I've got to get back to being well behaved. I've got to make a nice environment from now. I can't take that out on them. I can't shout at kids, or I can't 1 week say to them, you're not allowed to smash the ball in the goals while I'm talking, and then the next week they smash the ball in the goals because you're in a good mood, you let them. It's just consistency. Kids play consistency all the time. So great. I've got a couple of things I'll come to on this as well. Brilliant. So I'll have a couple of minutes just to answer a couple of things in the chat. So Matt, you feel like you're harder on your daughter, to be honest, and it's something that a lot of coaches do. Lee as well, you're harsher on him. There's normally a variety of reasons we do this. One is because actually it's easier to tell our own kid off or easier to criticise our own kid than other people's kids. So if we're trying to manage behaviour of the whole group, if 4 or 5 of them are messing around, it's a lot easier for us to have a go at our kid and say, look, sort yourself out, to then get the others to drop in line. And also it's because we want the best for our kids, and it's probably our way of trying to get what we hope is the best out of them. One tip that I have for this is, if you have got an assistant, is ask your assistant to coach your kid, especially if it comes to behavioural issues or anything like that, because what you don't want to do is ruin that relationship that you've got away from football. And it's a really difficult one when you're the coach, because doing football with your kid, I think, can grow a really good bond. And I think that's a really important part of it, is growing that bond. But you want to make sure that you're just consistent with how you treat your kid as well as the others. So they shouldn't get any special behavioral stuff. They shouldn't get away with what other kids won't get away with. But if you have got an assistant coach, ask your assistant coach to take the lead on coaching your kid. And that might mean some technical stuff if they're doing some technical coaching with them. If it's behavioural, get them to do it. And also, sometimes you'll probably notice you'd be giving the best coaching tip in the world, but because you're giving it, your kid doesn't want to listen to you. So sometimes getting someone else to help with that can really help as well. And then it's just going back to what I talked about before, is find out why they play, and asking your kids, why do they play, and what do they enjoy about football, and what do they enjoy about you coaching them. So finding out what they enjoy about you coaching them makes you sometimes look at your behaviours and go, oh, they really like it when I help them. They've said they really like it when you give me that little bit of extra help, you give me a bit of support, or you tell me well done. And then you can just change your behaviours a little bit if you need to. You might not need to. It might all be going okay, but that's just a couple of things there. Do I believe Phil's question, do I find they behave differently with older coaches, or is the age irrelevant? I think it just depends on, I have seen it where they don't engage with older coaches sometimes, but mainly just because, going back to these coaching behaviours, it's trying to get onto the kids' level and using language they understand. So if we go back to players, I've said it there, if I go up to a 7-year-old and I start telling them about Kerry Dixon and how good a football player Kerry Dixon was, and try and do stuff like that, they're not gonna relate to what I'm talking about. So you've got to just get up to kind of scratch. There you go. So 1989-90 Chelsea season review was my video that I watched every day when I got home from school, and Kerry Dixon was the striker. So there you go. You've just got to make sure that the players that you're working with, especially the younger ones, you can kind of get down to their level and get on the understanding that they're at, in terms of kids always wanted to play football. Kids always wanted to try and win, play with their friends, but relate it to players they know and players they understand. So you've got to kind of get into the mind of the 7 and 8 year olds, talking about FIFA and doing sweaties and stuff like that. If you're a coach that's maybe a little bit older, you've just got to learn those things to engage with those players. And that's all it's about, really, because I've seen kids that don't engage with young coaches. So I don't think the age comes into it personally. I think it's just how you engage with them. Okay. So hopefully, Michael, you'll be Googling or YouTubing Kerry Dixon later on. That's something I tell the kids to do, by the way. If they don't know a player that I've mentioned, I'm talking about, I'll always just say, just go on YouTube. So Tony Yeboah or Gabriel Batistuta, go on YouTube, and then they'll come back to football the next week going, oh yeah, he was amazing, he was brilliant, he's a great player. And it's a way for them just to connect to it. Good stuff. Okay, so I'll go on to the next section now. Again, any questions, anything that comes up, just chuck in the chat after, and I'll get to it in about 10-15 minutes. We'll have another break. So, sessions. I'm going to probably chuck quite a lot at you here, but I'm going to give you hopefully a basic overview of how you would structure a session for these age groups and what is important to get into these sessions. Then I'm going to give you a load of practices, and hopefully you'll go away and try them. And if you do try them, let me know how you get on, because they all need to be very simple and very basic. Doesn't need to be complicated at this age group. So I've tried to structure all sessions into 3 sections for this age group. So the first 20 minutes, ball mastery. The next 20 minutes will be 1v1 and 2v2. The last 20 minutes will be small-sided games. So roughly a third of the session on each. They should get thousands of touches in a session, as well as make hundreds of decisions per session. So if that sounds crazy to you straight away about them getting thousands of touches, it is pretty simple to do. Ball rolling time at an average grassroots session is 50 to 60%. So ball rolling is how many times they're actually playing football. So if you've got an hour session, on average, they're probably only actually playing football for half an hour. So if you've then got them in practices where they haven't got a ball each, or they're not always 1v1, they're not actually playing that much football. So it's really important that we adapt our practices so they're getting loads of touches, making loads of decisions, but it has to be realistic and look like the game. The thing to understand with this age group, they will go wrong all the time. It will fail all the time. That's okay. I personally would prefer to turn up to a session where the kids have got a ball each and they're bumping into each other and making mistakes and losing the ball. I would prefer that to a session where I see kids dribbling in and out of cones in an organised manner, because that is not what the game looks like at the weekend. And that's what we're trying to prepare our players for. Okay, so that little bit of chaos is absolutely fine. Okay, and this is a thing where parents come into it, they think, oh, if something looks organised and regimented, then it's good. It's not. It needs to be chaos, and it needs to have chaos going on all the time. So they need ball mastery, which is lots of time manipulating the ball in different ways. But there must be a stimulus with this. So touching the ball in and out of cones, yes, they're getting lots of touches, but there's no stimulus, because what they need to be doing is touching the ball and then looking up to see something that is happening, whether that's a defender, whether that's space, and then their brain is making a decision on what touch to take next, depending on what that stimulus is in front of them. Okay, so they have to have a stimulus, no dribbling in and out of cones. I will come back in a bit. You'll see one of my sessions, they do dribble in and out of cones. So it's not a never. It's just when the majority of their time is make sure they're making decisions and there's a little bit of chaos going around. Then we're trying to make most games 1v1, 2v2 after that. The reason I go up to 2v2 with this age group is because then you're either on the ball or you're supporting the ball. So you're always involved in the game. So if you're not on the ball, you're thinking about your movement to support and help someone. If you go to 4v4, 5v5, 6v6, 7v7, the higher the numbers go, the more chance there is that a player will not be involved in the game at all. So that's why I go to 1v1, 2v2 to the next bit. When I go to the games-based practices, I go maximum 4v4. And then I'll put rules in. So some people call them constraints. I call them rules for each game to get the outcome that you want to get out of it. Finally, every practice should involve decision making. So the best players as adults are good decision makers. But let these kids make decisions. Accept that they're going to make loads of them wrong. That's absolutely fine. But they will get better. They will get better the more decisions they make, and then you can help. So in terms of ball mastery, here's a few practices. Everyone that's on the chat, I will email these to you as well. So I'll ask you just to drop me a message with your email, and I will send all these to you so you get a copy. So ball mastery is practicing different ways to manipulate the ball using different parts of both feet. I include skills in ball mastery, so your step overs, your drag backs, and stuff like that. So first one I call it dribble or drive. So every player has got a ball each. I've got a red team and a blue team, but I'm just saying dribble round and go towards a player and then do a bit of skill to beat them and then find some space. What I want to start seeing is them getting their head up to recognise there's a player in front of me. Then I talk to them about how close to them should you get before you do your skill. Because if you do a step over and you're 10 yards from them, you're not tricking them. So try and get close enough to them that if you do your bit of skill, it's going to trick them, even if it's dropping your shoulder and just going the other way. Because what they'll do at first, they'll start clattering into each other, and then they'll go, what they'll do is they've got this favourite move where they drop that shoulder and they go that way. But actually, if there's players moving around and there's no space there, you've got to talk to them about drop your shoulder and go the other way, because that's what the space is. So by just saying to them, instead of saying to them, go and beat a bit of thin air, dribble at a player. They're not trying to tackle each other. Dribble at a player and then try your skill there. First 2 minutes, chaos. Bang, 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 bang. After that, just leave them. They'll get better and better, but just leave them. Then I progress it to only dribble at players on the opposite team. So now there's a bit more awareness. So get up, get your head up and start scanning and looking around. And then the final progression, so this is a 10, 15-minute practice. They're having loads of goes of like a minute, 90 seconds long. The last one is, if you look up, if you're a blue player and you see two reds in front of you, instead of trying to take one on, try and accelerate through the space between them. So now you're just making that little bit of decision making of, instead of dribbling up, there's a bit of space, I'm going to drive and attack it. You could do this practice every week for 6, 7, 8 weeks for your warm up. They'll get hundreds and hundreds of touches in 10 minutes. As a coach, get yourself on a timer and say you're going to play for 1 minute. I won't stop you, no matter how much they're clattering or anything like that. Then go 20 seconds rest while you put maybe a little coaching point in, play for a minute again, and you'll see how many touches they get. If someone's doing a good bit of skill, get them to show everyone. So if you've got a boy or a girl that's quite skillful and does different things, say, can you show everyone? And then everyone will try and copy it. So the next way to do this practice, because you might need to keep mixing it up, exactly the same practice, but do it in a circle. Now, the reason you do it in a circle is because there's no corners, and it means players have to go into congested areas. They can't hide. So it's actually a little bit more difficult in a circle than it is in a square. So we're just graduating the difficulty there. So if you want to do it in a circle, that will make it a little bit more difficult. So this is the first 15, 20 minutes of your session, a little practice like this. There's 4 more here that you can try. Again, they involve loads of touches, loads of decision making, but they're also fun games as well that kids can enjoy. So dribble versus run with the ball. The blues have got to get end to end as many times as they can, and the reds have got to get from side to side as many times as they can. But if anyone bumps into anyone, they lose all their points. So when they get to the end, they get a point. When they get back, they get another point. But if they bump, they lose all their points. So the blues have got more opportunity to drive into space, take bigger touches and attack the space really quickly. The reds go in the opposite way. They've got to have really close control and awareness around them, looking left and right, to make sure that they can move the ball and stop and start and work on loads of different touches. Let them play for a minute and then you let them swap. So they have to attack the other way. But again, they get loads and loads of little touches, and it's just a fun little game as well. Next one is passers versus dribblers. So I don't overly encourage too much passing at this age, although it does happen naturally. I haven't got a problem with it. This one, the 4 blues have got a ball each, and they've got to dribble round, and the reds have got to try and pass the ball to each other. So the blues aren't allowed to tackle, but all they've got to do is start blocking the passes. But it's really difficult to block the passes when you've got to dribble the ball at the same time. So they're constantly looking up, constantly have to change direction, constantly have to use left foot, right foot, inside and outside of the foot to block the passes. So you can see how many passes the red team makes in a minute, and then swap it over so the blues are now the passers and the reds are the dribblers. Again, loads and loads of touches. It's physically quite demanding as well, so they'll get out of breath after a minute or so. But loads of touches, head up, different parts of the feet. At no point in this are we saying you've got to dribble like this. Allow them to express themselves. If you notice someone's only ever using one foot, then challenge them to try and use the other foot. So this is where the skill as a coach comes in, is recognizing, okay, that one might need a little bit of challenging with that. So I'll put a little challenge in and make it exciting. The next 2 games you probably have played or know, but my problem with Bulldog and King of the Ring when I see it done is someone goes out or they're not touching the ball enough. So these are 2 adaptations of these games. And again, this is the first 15, 20 minutes. It's all fun stuff. So the Bulldog is you start with 2 defenders in the middle. You could do it with 1, 3, 4, depends on the ability levels of your players. But the defender in the middle has to dribble a ball as well. And the players in blue who are trying to get to end have to dribble a ball to get end to end. Okay, so it's nice and simple that if the red can dribble and get close to a blue, they're then allowed to leave their ball and take the blue player's ball. If they can dribble that ball and take it outside of the square under control, they then swap and the defender becomes the attacker becomes a defender. What we're doing here is teaching them transition as well. So instead of the red, if that red player doesn't have a ball, as soon as the blue comes near him, that red player is going to get the ball and smash it as far as they can. That's not what we want to teach players. What we want to teach players is win the ball and then dribble and keep the ball. So that's what, and then also what you're teaching a blue player is when they've lost the ball and the red player starts to dribble out the square, can they recover? So we're being quite clever in how we're training their brains to transition quickly rather than just smash the ball away. Okay, so then if the red wins the ball, dribbles it out of the square, they then become the attacker takes their place, but they've all got a ball at all times. Again, thousands of touches, fun games. Same with King of the Ring. This is the one where I have got the line of cones, but you don't need the line of cones. You could do anything you want. You could do a couple of keepy ups. You could do a dribble around the square as quickly as you can. However you want to set a challenge based on your players. So every player in the area has got a ball. The aim is to dribble your ball, but you've got to try and tackle and knock the other player's balls out the square at the same time. When you knock someone's balls out of the square, you get a point. So they're being competitive and seeing how many points they can get. But when your ball gets knocked out of the square, you have to, normally, I've seen this go, that's it, you're out, we'll wait for the last person. But we don't want to do that because we don't want kids sat around. So when they're knocked out, they collect their ball, they dribble in and out of the yellow cones, and they can join back in. So the winner's the one that gets the most points. Like I said, you might change those cones for a little challenge of, there's a square, you've got to do drop, bounce, kick, and catch, which is how we start to teach keepy ups. So drop, bounce, kick the ball, catch, and then you're allowed back in. So these are so that's 6 ball mastery practices. You could do that the first 15 minutes each week. That's 6 weeks worth of practices, and then you can revisit them again. But they'll get hundreds and hundreds of touches in the first 10, 15 minutes. Then I'd move on to 1v1 and 2v2 stuff. I start all these practices, and these are all shown as 1v1. By the way, any questions on any of those practices, just chuck them in the comments and I'll get back to you. After I've been through all the sessions, I'll revisit back through. So let players play 1v1 and 2v2 games. These will all start as 1v1 on these practices, and then you can just progress into 2v2. The key to 1v1 and 2v2 is not to have long lines and to expose them to loads of different situations so they can be a little bit unpredictable, they can develop different skills, and they have to play against players that are all different. So if you've got someone that's big and someone that's small, they're going to have to play against each other at the weekend. So let them have a go at playing against them. They'll come up with different solutions. So also what you notice, I always have 3 at one end and 2 at the other. I'll always have an odd number at each end. Okay, the reason I have an odd number at each end is then they don't play the same person twice in a row. So they're not learning just to play against one person. I don't mind small lines of 2 and 3 max in a 1v1. The only time you should have lines is where it's high physical intensity, and then the rest period can justify they've worked really hard for 30 seconds and now going to have 30 seconds rest before they go again. Okay, so first one is your real most basic one-to-one. The red plays the ball in, the blue comes out, and they're trying to score in this goal. But always have something that if the defender wins it, they can go and score at the other end, because you're teaching them transition. Have to have transition in every practice. If you have a practice that the defender wins the ball and then the practice stops, you've got to change something in the practice so that when a defender wins the ball, they've got something to do. Okay, because that will teach them how to transition quickly. Then the next one is, I always get asked, they don't want to do defending, they just want to do attacking. That's absolutely fine, because every time you want to do attacking, you need a defender normally. So we just change the reward. We just flip what we coach and we flip what we rewarded. So as you'll see in this bottom practice, the big goal, the red starts with the ball and passes it out to the blue player. So the blue player is trying to score in a small goal. So actually the reward for the red player for defending and winning the ball off this blue player is they then get to go and attack the big goal. Never underestimate the power of a big goal. No matter if you're 6 or 26, if you've got a big goal, you're more motivated than when you're shooting at the little goal. Okay, so here the motivation for the red is if they win the ball and score in the big goal, you say you don't have to swap ends. So actually you get to defend again, and then they'll get excited about defending again because then they get a chance to score in the big goal. It's just a little bit of a psychological flip going and rewarding the defending part rather than the attacking. So 3 other practices for 1v1. And again, I just change the setup of my 1v1s every week. So it's something different, give them a little bit of variety. I think in the last time I saw the research, 70% of the time that a player receives a ball in a 1v1, the defender is behind the attacker. But most of the 1v1s we do, the defender is running straight at the attacker and they're going head on. but actually they never then work on that movement to receive. So try and get your 1v1s for the defender to be behind the attacker when you can, because that's a realistic situation, because then they have to work on their movement before they receive the ball. The movement before they receive the ball will dictate what they do when they receive the ball, because if they can turn and face someone up, then they can do that. If the player's tight, they might have to learn to roll them or might want to set it back. But everything they do on the ball is dictated by what they do before. So we have to make them work on what they do before. So defender behind. So the yellow target player plays into the red attacker when the red attacker calls for it. And the defender is trying to win the ball. The red's trying to score in the goal. If the blue player wins it, then they transition and score in that little goal. But all I do with this is then they rotate. Server becomes attacker, attacker becomes defender, defender becomes the server. This is if you've got a set goalkeeper. If you haven't got a set goalkeeper, the four just rotate. Okay, and actually there's a lot of value in your goalkeeper playing out on pitch as well. So they just rotate, so they constantly get loads of little goes. And then they get to be a defender, they get to be an attacker, they get to be a midfielder that's playing the pass in as well. Next two, this could be the coach playing the ball in, or it can be a player like we've just said there, where they're doing the rotation, but the back-to-back goals. And what we do is we cone off an area, and they're not allowed to score in that coned area, because that stops someone blocking the ball and then just putting it straight in the goal. And what this will teach them is a little bit of trying to attack one area. If that area gets tight, they can go and attack the other side, and there'll be lots of turns. So they'll go from one goal to the other, trying to twist and turn all the time. So they're working on their turning skills, their take-on moves. And this next one is very similar. The last one with the offset goals. This is probably in a 15 by 15 yard area, both of these, maybe 20 by 20. But again, twisting and turning skills. So they go to one goal, do a step over, and then go towards the other goal, and then drag back to go towards the other goal. So there's a lot of using skills to change direction and then accelerating afterwards. So again, I would move all these from 1v1 up to 2v2. So if you think, so if they've had 20 minutes of that ball mastery and got hundreds and hundreds of touches, 20 minutes of this in a 1v1, 2v2, they've got loads and loads of touches, loads of different ways of manipulating the ball, as well as a little bit of combination play once you go up to 2v2 or just using this server. Now, small-sided games, again, I will always start these 2v2 and then progress them up to a maximum of 4v4 for this age group. Okay, if you haven't got even numbers, that's fine. It's okay to have an overload on one pitch, and we'll come a bit more onto that later. So I always start with my 4v4 pitch set up, which is the blue pitch at the top, blue pitch at the bottom. And then with the 2v2s, I'll set two mini pitches up inside the pitch. And then I'll have both those games going on. And then all I do when that game finishes is pick up the centre line, and I've got my pitch for 4v4. We can play straight away, go straight into the next game. Kids love games, and this is what they enjoy the most. So if you've got 8 players, it's a 4v, it's one 4v4. If you've got 9, it might be one 2v2 and one 3v2 pitch. If you've got 10, one 2v2, one 3v3. If you build it up, if you've got 14 players, you can have one 4v4 and one 3v3. You don't need goals. You can just have cones out for goals if you haven't got the goals. They don't need to be on big pitches in big areas either, but get them playing in smaller numbers as much as you can. Okay, it's really important, especially at the younger age groups. And if there's anyone here that coaches 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, adults, they love this as well. So put them into multiple pitches of 3v3 and 4v4 instead of an 8v8, 9v9. You'll get a lot out of them physically as well. So once it comes to small-sided games, start with 2v2 and then move it up to a 4v4. So here's examples of how I use small-sided games. So some people call them restraints. I'll just call them rules. I will use one of these rules each week. I won't tend to do more than one a week. It'll depend on what my focus has been on. Okay, so here's again another 6-7 weeks worth of practices you can do with your players. Find out which ones they enjoy, which they get the most out of. They'll normally then start to ask you, can we do that one? Can we do that one? So I'm a big believer in you don't restrict them to 2 touches. This might be controversial, especially for those that just started coaching, because most people that are coaching have played before. And one thing they've always done when they played was 2 touch, 3 touch, 1 touch. And the reasoning being it helps you move the ball quicker. I personally don't like saying, especially to younger ones, you must do this or you can't do this. Okay, there should always be a decision in there. So if you're playing two touch and you've got the dribbler that gets 1-against-1 against the defender, in a game, you go, right, take them on because you know they've got a good chance of winning, going to score. If you say you're playing two touch, you're taking that away from them, and then you're going to affect their decision making, and they're not going to be as effective in the games when they get to it. So, for example, one I use and about getting them to pass more. If you say to players, everyone's got to touch the ball, I understand why people have done that. I've done that. But actually, if your striker receives the ball in front of an open goal and then turns around and passes to your goalkeeper because your goalkeeper's not touched it, you're not going to be quite too happy about that in the game. And it's negatively affecting their decision making. So the first one I would use is how many passes your team makes before they score is how many goals you get. So if they do 4 passes and then score, it's worth 4 goals. Okay, so if you look at it like this, they're also working on risk versus reward. The more passes they make, the riskier it's getting. Okay, but it's up to them how they want to do it. If they want to score after 1, 3 or 4, as many passes as they want. Next game is split the pitch into thirds. And it's just saying to them, try to have a player in every third when you have the ball. This will teach them to spread out. It's nice and simple. If we're doing 2v2, it will be halves. It might be, can you be in a different half when you've got the ball so you can try and combine with each other? Okay, but not you've got to be in there. Can you try to do it? Because if the opportunity is to make a different decision, then they can do it. Teaching them how to high press. If you split the pitch into thirds and you say to them, if you win the ball in the top third and then score, it's worth 3. They will then start to press high up the pitch at the right times, and you can start talking about when to press and how to do it. Okay, but it's quite fun. So if you win it in the top third, it's worth 3. You might say if you win it in the middle third, it's worth 2. If you win it in the bottom third, it's worth 1, and then you can teach them to high press. You might flip that, and you want to sit back and defend. Go, actually, if you win it in your defensive third and then go score, it's worth 3. You can just let them decide what points are worth in each area if you want to make it a bit more fun as well. Next one's my favourite one, but it takes 5 minutes to get it right. They can either play 1 touch or have at least 4 touches. So basically, this is saying if you can't move the ball quickly, you have to have at least, you've got to be composed on it. So you've got to take at least 4 touches. So if you can't play quickly, then you've got to take at least 4 touches. So you can still pass quickly or you can dribble, it's up to you. But think about what one you want to do. A non-dominant foot game, this has got a little bit of you can't in it. So, but you can only have 1 touch with your dominant foot each time the ball comes to you. We say non-dominant instead of weaker foot because weaker implies that you can't get better at it. So non-dominant, you can only have 1 touch with it each time it comes to you. It doesn't matter if that's your first touch or your last touch. So if you're right-footed and you take the first touch with your left foot, set up your right foot for a shot, fine. Or vice versa. If you take your first touch with your right foot, you've then got to use your non-dominant one. Takes them a little while, but it's really good fun, and it gets them learning using both feet. So 1 touch finish. So again, it's got to be a 1 touch finish. If someone on your team scores with a first time finish, it's worth 3 goals. So we're not saying you've got to, but we know that if they finish quickly, they've got more chance of scoring a goal before a defender comes to press them. Okay, so reward it instead of saying that you've got to do this. And in the counter-attacking game, if your team scores within 8 seconds of winning the ball back, it's worth 3 goals. Again, if they take longer than 8 seconds, it's absolutely fine. You can decide the time. They only get 1 goal. But if they do it quickly, they get 3 goals. So it's just different ways of wording things. So they've got fun games to play at the end, depending on what kind of your topic is. Any questions on any of those practices or sessions? Hopefully you can try some of them out and see how you get on. But like I said, I will email these across, but it's just things to try and then asking players what they like as well. So running over time a little bit because like I said, I tend to waffle. Coaching mixed abilities. So when you're coaching those sessions, you'll have players of completely different ability levels. And this is no matter what level of the game you work at, you've always got players of different ability levels. So it's a few things to understand. They develop at different ages. Okay, wait there, I've got a question coming. Oh, we go. There we go. So I'm just going on to that now, Christopher. So they develop at different stages, and it's having an understanding of that. But we've got to try to make all players rounded at all times. So if you've got your best player at this moment in time, they still need challenging. Okay. And then the player that's struggling the most at that time also needs challenging. And then it's figuring out what do they need challenging in, because actually it's not always technical or tactical. A lot of the times it might be psychological, might be their physicality. So at this age, under 6s, 7s and 8s, your best player is rarely going to be the best player when they get to, especially to teenage years. They're normally the best player at this age because they're more physically developed. And the problem we get is you get a player at this age that will be physically developed and they'll dominate, and we don't challenge them and push them on the areas that they need to develop. And then when everyone catches them up physically, they can't cope with it. Psychologically, sometimes they can't cope with it because they've always been told they're talented or they're the best player, and now they're not. Or now they can't use their physicality. They haven't got anything else in their locker to be able to excel. So we need to push them as much as the players that physically aren't up to their level. Now, also, you will get the players now that really struggle against the physical players, and it's getting them in a scenario and in a situation where they can still develop without losing their confidence as well. So it is probably one of the biggest challenges. So I'm going to give you some practical examples of how to do it, and we use STEP. So anyone that's on an FA coaching course will have heard the term STEP. And I'm just going to go on to that a little bit more. But this is the skill of a coach. So as a coach, the more experienced you get and the more you adjust things and change things, you'll be able to just go, I need to make the pitch bigger. I need to put a challenge in like that. The more you try these things, you'll get at doing it. There's nothing wrong with doing something as a coach that doesn't work. If I'm ever doing coaching courses now, the coach that turns around after 2 minutes in their session and goes, I need to change my area size, they're the best coaches. The ones that go, I don't want to change it because I'm scared I'll look silly, they're the ones that struggle. Just change it. If you're thinking it's changing, change it. It's absolutely fine. And you know what? If it don't work, that's fine as well. Change it again. So STEP is space, the 4 things we change in our sessions to help the group or an individual. So space, task, equipment, and then people or players. So on the side here, I've put a 2-5-8 principle is what I use. So if a player or the group are getting success 2 times out of 10, it's probably a little bit too difficult. You need to make it easier, as long as you've let it run for a few minutes. If they're getting success 8 times out of 10 as an individual or as a group, it's too easy. You need to change it to make sure they're challenged. If they're getting success roughly 5 times out of 10, that's the golden spot. That's where you want to be, because they're being challenged as much as they're getting success. So I'll fly through these because I'm kind of running out of time a little bit. Space, we could change. If you make the area smaller, they've got to work on close control and sharp movements. So that player that's physically really dominant, make them play in small areas where it's all about their touch. Okay. Or you can make the area bigger, which is about exploiting space and physicality. The bigger areas tend to favour the more powerful players. The smaller areas tend to favour the more technical players. Don't be worried about having different sets of players in different size areas on a practice. If you make the pitch longer, you can work on penetrating passes and angles to play forward. So that's another way to change it. If you make the pitch wider, you're going to force players to receive on the back foot more and switch play more. But this will also create more 1v1 opportunities as well. As I've said before, if you make the areas a circle rather than a square, there's no corners to hide in. You have to go into traffic. So that's a few ways you can change the space in your session, thinking about, do I need to challenge individuals or the whole group? So I might put in the player that's the best player, that's really physical and strong, actually might not have a great first touch or movement. If you put them in against the player who's normally smaller, got a lower centre of gravity, they'll get a little bit more success because their movement tends to be better and they move the ball quicker. Okay, so it's just one way to think about challenging people differently. Don't always make the player work on their weakness though, because if they've got a strength, try and turn it into something called a super strength. make them so good at it, no one can stop them. Task, you can give individual and group challenges. So it might be saying to the player that takes too many touches, in your opinion, they get double points for a one-touch finish. Then it might be worth saying to the player that the boy or the girl that is not confident at taking someone on 1v1, every time they try to take someone on 1v1, they get a point, even if it's unsuccessful. If they try and take them on and they're successful, it's worth 3 points. Okay, so they get a reward for trying it, they get a bigger reward for doing it and actually getting success. So you might give different challenges to different players within your group. So stay away from can't and must challenges and use challenges such as try to or when you can. Also, flipping it psychologically, putting challenges on to say, can you encourage your teammates when they make a mistake? Can you lead some team talks and tell everyone something positive that they've done in that half? So trying to challenge players psychologically as well as the technical, tactical. In terms of equipment, you might use different targets for goals. So actually, instead of having big goals, you might have to say, right, instead of scoring in a goal, you've got to knock a ball off a cone. So that will get players working on accurate finishing rather than just power. So for that player that's really big, physical, and just can smash the ball in from 30 yards, actually, you've got to hit this ball off a cone, try side footing with your finishing, teaching them a bit of finesse as well. Again, you're making them a more rounded player. Add cones into corners of goals for more points. Use different size and shape balls for fun and work on ABCs. You don't always need fancy equipment like SAQ stuff, like ladders, hurdles. You can just play bib tag or dodgeball, and that'll teach them loads of different movement skills. And one of my favourite ones, when you've got the grabby defender or the player that can't use their body or positioning very well defensively, put tennis balls in their hands and make them hold tennis balls when they're defending. So, because when you're holding a tennis ball, you can't grab anyone. You've got to really think about your foot movement, foot patterns, and how do you defend like that. So tennis balls in the hands or bibs in the hands is always a good one for that. People and players, use more or less players. If you've got two really physical players that dominate, it's no problem having 4v2 and set it up as a fun challenge for all of them and let them go right back to the start, come up with different solutions. You can pair off players with who have a strength with ones who's at their current area of development. So someone that might be physically struggling, put them with a physically strong player in the 2v2s. And if you put them in a 2v2 together and you're using the game of however many passes you make is how many goals you get, they'll start to complement each other and help each other out. And that kind of is the same as the opposite strength area development below at the bottom. So these are loads of different ways, again, to manage difference and to start thinking about how to change it off. Just quick questions come in. Not far off the structure for training sessions, might focus on something specific and have an activity for this, which will take some. It's not a problem if it takes some of the 1v1, 2v2 away, but try and make that practice 1v1 or 2v2, if that makes sense. So if you're doing, I've done one recently, a team that was struggling to play out from the goalkeeper because they get pressed so quickly. So we just done an end zone game of when you get the ball from a player, it was teaching to receive on your back foot to try and play to a target player at the other end zone. And it was just 1v1 in the middle with the two target players. So that's still, although that's a practice that's slightly different, then it's still teaching those skills in 1v1, 2v2 rather than 6v6 to 7v7s. So hopefully that makes sense. But it's okay to go away from the structure I've got, and I'm not an expert that knows absolutely everything, but if you can keep the game small, so it's 2v2, 3v3, even in those practices, they'll still be getting loads of decisions, loads of touches, and then you can relate it to the topic that you're doing as well. Rotation of positions I'm going to come on to, Phil. I'm going to be really quick, so I'm running out of time. Parents, set the standards early. By standards, I don't mean you're going to go and shout and scream at them, say this is not, but set the standards about what you do there, how you do things, and why you do it. If you rotate positions, this is what we do. We rotate positions. We play equal playing time. We don't have parents coach from the side. Be consistent with whatever you're going to do and tell them straight away. If they go, I don't like that, my kid's a striker, they're going to play for England, they need to play up front, they need to play all the game every game. I know it's grassroots football. Tell them that's not what we do as a club, then you can go. Because eventually they will anyway. And that will sound really harsh, but you've got to set the standards early of what you want to do and what you want to be. If you aren't going to rotate positions and you are going to be all about winning, again, be honest with them about it. And then they can't complain if it's the other way. But we'll come back onto that. Code of conduct and team ethos, whatever you've got then, you've got to write that down and they've got to agree it. The code of conduct and team ethos should come from the players as well, though, saying what they want to get out of it and what they want to do. And clubs around here have a kind of 3 words thing. So a fun, safe, respect. All their sessions will be fun, safe and respectful, and that's how their players will act. And the last thing I put about parents, I'm really rushing through this. Yes, Kelly, I'll come on to that. Involve the parents. When I'm doing team talks, do them next to the parents. If you're setting challenges for players and ways you're going to play, do it next to the parents so they understand what you're doing. Okay, that's absolutely fine. So get them involved and get them to understand it. I am going to answer these questions, or it doesn't mean I'm going to run over slightly. Which the last bit was match days anyway, and some of these questions relate to it. So views on rotating positions when no one is keen on being a goalkeeper. If you're going to rotate positions and you haven't got a goalkeeper, everyone should take it in turns, for me personally. If you define what success is, if success is in your team is working for each other, encouraging each other, trying new things, then when someone the reason most players don't want to go in goal is because they don't want to let goals in because they feel they've let people down. If you can change the whole ethos, so it's like, I'm just going to have a go at it and try it, it puts less pressure on them. And then it's got to be consistent that everyone is having a go. If it gets to the point, if you've got a kid that doesn't want to, if it's their turn in goal, they're not going to turn up because they're too scared by it, too intimidated, you might have to change tack. There's no kind of perfect answer. If you've got 3 or 4 that are quite happy to have a go, really encourage them and praise them for helping their team out and stuff like that, and praise them for living by your ethos, and then hopefully they'll buy more into it. And then what you've got to make sure is when they have a go, they always get praised for trying and not the outcome. If they let 10 goals in, they get praised for having a go at it. Do not let parents pay kids for scoring goals during games. This is not I'm going to be a bit blunt sometimes. This is not a discussion. Don't do it. Don't let them do it. Okay. It negatively affects decision making. So instead of coming through one-on-one and then seeing a square pass for the goal, okay, they're shooting from everywhere. It affects decision making there. Most importantly, it is giving kids external rewards for playing football. When it gets to the point they go, well, if you're not paying me, I'm not playing anymore. Like, you've not grown a love for the game. And then this will sound really extreme, where does it stop? Oh, I'm not working hard in my exams unless you pay me for doing my exams, stuff like that. Kids play football and should want to play football for the internal rewards and intrinsic rewards of playing, being with my friends, getting to run around, enjoying playing with everyone. So just don't let it happen. That's my quite blunt opinion on it. Yeah, and how do I deal with squabbles and bad behaviours? Go right back to the start, be consistent in how you deal with it. Secondly, understand your own blind spots. So actually, if you find there's kids in your group that share your types of values as a person, you're probably less likely to have a go at them for bad behaviour. Whereas if you've got kids, so for example, if you really value kids that are people that are on time and prepared, if you get kids that are always on time and prepared, and then you get one kid that's always late and unprepared, you're more likely to have a go at the kid that's not like you quicker. So it's just something we need to be aware of. But squabbles and bad behaviour, you kind of have, for me, a little 4 or 5 step process. The first one's just giving them the look. So looking at them straight away to kind of give them the look to say, you know we don't do that here, so what are you doing? So give them the look. The second one is ask them then, is that behaviour acceptable? Like, do you think that's acceptable? The third one's a warning. And then the fourth one might be, you're going to have a couple of minutes out because you're not sharing our ethos of how we do things. But it's going through a process. If you've got someone that's continually then breaking all your rules, being disruptive, it might get to a point of conversation with parents, but this is a longer conversation than this, to say, think out why they like it, why are they playing up, why are they acting out, what's their home life like. If they're always late, is it their fault? And in grassroots football, we've really got to start to get to know our players to understand their behaviours. Have they got behavioural issues? Have they got maybe some behavioural issues that they need some help with, or understanding that how you talk to certain players, which can come out through conversations with parents? Because you get kids that bounce the ball while you're talking or fidgeting. Actually, that's how some kids concentrate. So we think it's being rude, but actually, if you ask them, well, what did I say? They say, well, you said this, 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 and this. Actually, it's understanding that's how some kids concentrate. So I haven't got a problem with the personally, I haven't got a problem with the, if it escalates and it breaks all your team's rules and ethos of a minute out. I do work with some coaches who go the opposite to me, and they will ignore any bad behaviour and just go, right, I will praise kids that are doing the right thing to bring the other ones in line. But if you want to go and mess around over there, if you don't want to join in, if you want to mess around, you can go over there, but you're not allowed to football because the footballers get the footballs. And then you just praise positive behaviours all the time. And hopefully, instead of then us kind of battering kids down, it will start bringing kids up, because they'll want to get told, well done, or that's good. So maybe try that one as well. I'm just going to fly through the match day bits. Rotation of positions. I've done a video on this on the Coaches Club, and about why it's so important at under 7s and 8s, to the point of you can give kids long-term injuries if you don't rotate positions. So think about all the movements a centre-back makes in an under 7, under 8, a defender makes in the under 7s, under 8s games, the types of sprints they do, the distances, the types of twist and turn compared to what a striker or a winger does. So physically, we should get them experience different positions to learn how to do all different types of movement. Also, if you, the main argument for not rotating positions is you want to make someone specialist in one position. My arguments against that are, if you want to make a specialist in a position, it's because you're trying to get them to play at the best level they can play at. Well, if the best level they can play as a kid is going to an academy, they will not like players that can only play one position. They want players that can play different positions. If they go and play first team football and they are an out and out right back, and then you get to the first team level and the manager doesn't play with a right back, they're not flexible enough. They can't play other positions. It's the same with if they don't play a number 10 or a wide striker. And if you look at the modern day footballer, Kyle Walker, for example, has to play in a back three. As a wing back, he has to be able to go up and down the pitch. He has to be able to tuck in centre mid. He has to be able to cross high up the pitch. He has to be able to get into the box. He needs to be able to score goals. That's what a modern fullback needs to be able to do. So if we don't allow 7, 8, 9-year-olds, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds to experience different positions, they're not going to get an understanding of how different parts of the pitch work. I don't have a problem with understanding 7, 8-year-olds want to play their favourite position. That's fine. But if you get an ethos of you'll spend 75% of the time in your favourite position and 25% of your time in a different position because it will make you better in your favourite position, that will be massively important for them. So rotate positions all the time. Equal playing time at this age is vital, because we've just gone through why someone's the strongest player at this moment in time. I can guarantee you it's going to swap. The ones at the bottom now will be the best ones at 12, 13, 14. Doing equal playing time gives them their best chance. And no kids at this age want to play less than their mates. Okay, it's really important, and I could go on for this for about 20 minutes or so. The other stuff, I'll just pick out the most important one, and the two for match days. Should anything change from training to a match day? You get some kids that goes, they feel nervous on a match day. It's because of the behaviours of the people around them. And that's why we shouldn't change our behaviours. Just let them, if they don't want to get shouted at during a match for making a mistake. So if you wouldn't shout at them at training for making a mistake, don't shout at them in the match days for making a mistake. They don't do it on purpose. But the biggest thing here, and I'll finish off with this, is on a match day, you need to define what is success for your team and to your players. If success is everyone turning up and working hard and giving it everything, then if they do that, they're happy, no matter what the score is. If success is you've all got an individual challenge, I want you to try and move the ball quickly today. I want you to try and take players on when you're 1v1. Can you support your player playing next to you, especially if you've got a player that's struggling a little bit? You might challenge one of your players. I want you to be really supportive of this player throughout that game. That is what success is. So if you can set little challenges like that, or team challenges, such as when we get in the final third, in and around a penalty area, can we get some shots away? That's what success is. It changes kids' mindsets to, did you win? That's the first thing. Did you win or did you lose? That's not an indicator of success at this age. It's really important to understand that. And I've kind of shot through this stuff because I know I've gone over time. Obviously on here is stuff you can follow us on. I'm going to be doing these webinars once a month or so. For those that are hanging around and still here, thank you. I'm happy to stay for another 5-10 minutes to answer any questions if you want to chuck them in the chat. But hopefully it's been useful. Anyone that wants me to send them a copy of this, can you just reply to the email with the link, or you can comment on anything on Twitter or Facebook, or DM me your email, and I will send you a copy of this so you've got all the sessions and stuff. Perfect. Okay, so I've got one, and you can put your email in here. Great. Any questions before I go? You're welcome to chuck them out. I'm happy to answer. Yeah. I've got a raised hand. Do you want to just type it in there? Right, I've got all these emails come through. I'll get these emails out tomorrow morning. Right, great stuff, guys and girls. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks for coming along. It's much appreciated. The experience with, okay, questions just come in. Do I have much experience of dealing with kids with learning difficulties such as autism? I've had experience of it, especially working in schools for so many years. I would say I'm far from an expert on it. We work with a company called Inclusive Sport who help us out with that. What I would say with this is one where I really have I try to involve the parents a lot, because my experiences of children with autism and learning difficulties is finding out what works for them. So we've had, I've had kids with a learning difficulty that I didn't even realise they couldn't see colours, there's certain colours on a whiteboard. So I used to use on a whiteboard all the time, and I'd write things out, and he was always kind of a bit never really paying attention, and then found out this, and I was like, right, okay, one, I just changed the colours of the pens, and two, it was having conversations with him just to check his understanding of it. With the autism of some of the behavioural traits they have, again, it's just talking to the parents, because they might say there's a better way to explain things to that player. And if you can find out as much information about what they do at their school with them to help them, you can then just slightly adjust your coaching behaviours, and you can see a massive effect on the players that hopefully helps them. So it would just be finding out as much as you can about that individual, and then try and incorporate that into your coaching sessions. It might even be that we've had it before with kids that need to know what's going to happen today. So it's fine, right? This kid needs to know what's going to happen, or they need their routine. So when we say what's going to happen, it's all right. We're playing at this. These players are going to start. You're going to start the game, or you're going to start on the bench, and you're going to come on in this minute. And I'm going to play you in these positions. Just giving them that little bit of understanding of what's coming up if they need that. So yeah, that's what I would do. That is find out as much as you can about the individual and their needs. Okay, great stuff, everyone. I shall see you soon, and message me anything on social media, any questions you have. Take care, guys. Bye.